Imagine this. You start a company in your garage with nothing but passion and big dreams. It grows into a global sensation, changing the way people think, work, and live. And then one day, you get fired from your own creation. Most people would walk away, but not Steve Jobs. Instead, he turned failure into fuel. His return didn't just save Apple from the edge of bankruptcy, it transformed the company into the most valuable brand on the planet. In today's business case study, we'll dive into the incredible comeback story of Steve Jobs. A journey filled with vision, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of innovation. Back in 1976, three young dreamers, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, started a small company in a garage. Their creation, the Apple I computer, wasn't much to look at, but it planted the seed of a revolution in personal computing. Just 4 years later, in 1980, Apple went public. Overnight, it turned its founders into millionaires and made headlines across the world. And in 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, a computer that was bold, simple, and user-friendly. It stood out in a market dominated by IBM's gray business-like machines. At only 30 years old, Steve Jobs had become the face of Silicon Valley, hailed as a visionary, a genius, and a rebel who dared to think different. But as history shows, success can be fragile, and for Jobs, the biggest challenge was still to come. Behind the scenes, Apple was in trouble. Steve Jobs was a visionary, but he was also difficult to work with. His fiery personality clashed constantly with Apple's board and the company's CEO, John Sculley, the very man Jobs had recruited. To make matters worse, the Macintosh, though revolutionary, didn't sell as well as expected. Meanwhile, Microsoft was rising fast with Windows, offering cheaper PCs that appealed to the masses. By 1985, tensions boiled over. In a shocking move, Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple, the very company he had built from his garage. Without Jobs, Apple began to drift. The 1990s were marked by one failed product after another, like the Newton and Macintosh clones. Competitors such as Dell, HP, and Microsoft surged ahead, while Apple kept falling behind. By the mid-1990s, Apple's market share had collapsed. Losses piled up. The once iconic company was now on the brink of bankruptcy. Here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. By 1997, Apple was days away from bankruptcy. Desperate to survive, the company made a bold move. It acquired Next, the company Steve Jobs had built after leaving Apple. And with that deal, Jobs returned home. This time, he came back wiser, sharper, and laser-focused. And his strategy to save Apple was nothing short of revolutionary. First, simplify. At the time, Apple's product lineup was a mess. Dozens of confusing models that drained money and confused customers. Jobs cut nearly 70% of them. In their place, he introduced a simple 2x2 matrix. Consumer desktop, consumer portable, professional desktop, professional portable. That clarity not only cut costs, it also made innovation possible again. Second, bold design and innovation. In 1998, Apple unveiled the iMac, sleek, colorful, fun. A computer that didn't look like a boring office machine, it looked like the future. The iMac became an instant hit and reminded the world that Apple could still dazzle. Third, strategic partnerships. In a move no one saw coming, Jobs announced that Microsoft, their fiercest rival, would invest $150 million in Apple. Even more shocking, Microsoft Office would continue on the Mac. Rivals became partners, and suddenly, confidence in Apple was restored. Fourth, the retail revolution. Most companies relied on third-party stores to sell their products. Jobs changed that. He created Apple stores, beautifully designed spaces where people could experience Apple products firsthand. Critics mocked the idea, but soon Apple stores became some of the most profitable retail spaces in the world. And finally, the ecosystem. Jobs didn't just want to sell gadgets. He wanted to create a world where every product connected seamlessly. It began with the iPod in 2001, then iTunes in 2003, and eventually, the iPhone in 2007. Together, they formed an ecosystem so powerful that once you joined Apple, you never wanted to leave. With these bold moves, Apple wasn't just saved, it was reborn. The results were nothing short of historic. In 1997, Apple was just 90 days away from bankruptcy. But only a few years later, in 2001, the iPod exploded onto the scene. It didn't just play music, it became a cultural icon. Over time, more than 400 million units were sold, turning Apple into a household name once again. Then came 2007, the year the iPhone was unveiled. But this wasn't just another product launch. It was a revolution. The iPhone redefined what a phone could be, transforming Apple from a computer company into a global technology and lifestyle powerhouse. By 2011, Apple had overtaken Exxon to become the most valuable company in the world, worth over $350 billion. And today, that same company, once left for dead, has crossed a market valuation of over $3 trillion, cementing its status as the most valuable brand on the planet. From near bankruptcy to market dominance, Steve Jobs' comeback stands as one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in history. It's a story of vision, resilience, and the relentless belief that technology, when combined with design and imagination, can change the world. So what can we learn from Apple's incredible comeback? First, focus is power. Steve Jobs cut through the noise, eliminated distractions, and concentrated on just a few core products. That focus turned struggling ideas into iconic innovations. Second, design matters. Apple showed the world that beauty and usability aren't just extras, they can be a powerful competitive advantage. Third, partnerships over pride. Sometimes survival means working with rivals. The bold Microsoft deal reminded everyone that collaboration can be a smart strategy, even with your fiercest competitors. Fourth, think ecosystem, not just products. Apple didn't just sell gadgets, it built an entire world where its products worked together seamlessly, creating loyalty that no single device could achieve alone. And finally, leadership vision is everything. Jobs wasn't just a CEO, he was a storyteller, an inspirer, and a visionary who rallied employees, customers, and the world around a shared dream. Steve Jobs' story proves one powerful truth: failure isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the setup for the greatest comeback of your life. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Apple's journey, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you'll never miss our next exploration of the world's most fascinating companies.